Let me get started with a recap of what we know about firms. Okay, basics of firms. First, firms have to decide Q and P that will maximize what's their objective. Let's call them Q star and P star as like their optimal decisions, what they decide to choose. What is the objective of a firm in our economic models? To maximize profits. Okay, and for double points, what is profit equal to? What is profit equal to? Something minus something. Right, revenue minus cost. To be completely clear, total revenue minus total cost. Okay, now next thing, how do we calculate total revenue? It's a simple calculation, something times something. Yeah. Price times quantity sold. Yeah, price times quantity. Okay, so if the firm sells 100 widgets at $2 a piece, then it makes $200 of revenue. Okay, minus total cost. Now, to maximize profits, the marginal principle says to choose Q star where what is true? Keep producing Q as long as marginal something, yeah, is half of it. Keep producing as long as marginal something is greater than something else. Yeah. Right. Marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost. Okay. Marginal revenue is the revenue you get from producing this widget, this next widget. Marginal cost is the extra cost of producing this next widget. Marginal, keep in mind what it means. It's like the next widget, one more widget. Okay. When you're studying, you're thinking about the benefit of the next hour of studying. You're thinking about the cost of the next hour of studying, what you give up from the next hour of studying. Those are marginal benefit and marginal cost. Okay, to be clear, it's like from the next hour of studying. Okay, with firms, it's from the next widget produced. Okay, so the marginal principle is to pick Q star where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Okay, so keep producing Q as long as marginal revenue is greater than or equal to marginal cost, and then stop producing Q when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Now, we have a couple types of firms we've talked about so far. One is, a couple of markets. In a competitive market, the firm takes the price as given. Okay, it's just fixed. You know, I'm a dairy farmer. Every morning, a truck comes by to pick up my the milk I produce. They tell me what today's price is for milk, and I sell at that price. I just accept it. Okay, so I take the price as fixed. I don't try to impact it. I can't do anything to impact it. Okay, so take the price as fixed, and then that means that the marginal revenue is equal to simply the price. I produce one more widget, I get P dollars for it. I produce another 100 pounds of milk, I get that current price, $25. I think milk sells for about $25 per hundredweight, per 100 pounds of milk. It's close to the current market price. So I produce another 100 pounds of milk, I get $25. Produce another 100 pounds, I get $25. Each extra unit I produce brings me the market price. Okay, so that means that the rule for choosing Q star for a competitive firm is marginal cost equals price. Okay, so this is an important idea. Okay, so just take the price as given and produce widgets where the marginal cost equals the marginal price. Will maximize profits. Now, next thing, in the long run, well, in the short run, price could be anything. Okay, but if the price is too low, firms will exit the market in the long run. If the price is unusually high, or if the price is high enough to give the give the industry unusually high profits, then firms will enter the industry. Okay, so the other day, a couple days ago, I was reading an article in the New York Times about the cannabis market in Canada. Okay, cannabis, you all know what that really is. Marijuana, pot, weed, etc., etc. Okay, when we try to make it official, or we call it cannabis, I guess. Canada, about 2 years ago, fully legalized cannabis. Okay, and there's a big rush of firms to enter the industry, set up greenhouses, set up like distribution chains. Okay, turns out the industry has not been as profitable as people had hoped. Okay, so they entered the industry thinking there'd be unusually high profits, and that's this idea that in the long run, if there are going to be unusually high profits, firms want to enter the industry. But then there was a glut. Okay, they sort of overestimated the market, and now firms are shutting down. They can't make enough money, they're shutting down. Okay, it was kind of a neat economic current event. And firms have been selling cannabis at a loss. Okay, they produce the crop, they don't have anything else to do with it, they sell it at a loss, but in the long run, they're shutting down. Okay, so in the short run, the price could be anything, but if the price is too low, firms exit the market. If the price is high enough that it means, if the price is so low that it makes the industry unprofitable, firms exit. If the price is so high the industry has unusually high returns, firms enter. And so in the long run, there's only one price that is stable, right? That doesn't cause firms to want to enter or exit, where the market is in equilibrium. There's no flow of firms in or out. I would say that what has happened with the cannabis industry in Canada has not been an equilibrium. It's not in a nicely balanced, stable situation. There are firms entering, there are firms exiting. In the long run, it's going to settle down with kind of the optimal price that results in the optimal number of firms making a normal profit. And there's one price that'll do that. Price in the long run will be the minimum, the price in the long run, P star C for the competitive market, will be the minimum average total cost. possible for a firm. And the profit of the competitive firm in the long run is 0. Okay. Now, to be clear, this means what we call economic profit, which includes paying investors a normal return on their investment. So investors are getting a dividend check, a share of the accounting profits. Some of that is considered by economists a cost of doing business. Economic profit refers to unusually high return. Okay. Above what other investment opportunities are offering. So let's see, the other important lessons here. Price in the competitive market in the long run. Long run profit, 0. Got it? So major points for competitive markets. Okay, next. We talked about a firm in a monopoly. Okay. A firm in a monopoly still behaves according to the principle of picking Q star M, the quantity that will maximize profits, occurs where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Still true. But marginal revenue is different from simply the price. Marginal revenue is not the price. Okay? The monopolist can increase revenue by restricting the amount it sells. So in fact, the monopolist, kind of paradoxically, can make more money by selling a lower quantity because the price goes up. Okay? Or flip that around, selling more widgets can result in less revenue because it floods the market with widgets. Remember my story, when I mentioned the F. Scott Fitzgerald story about a diamond the size of the Ritz. Okay, the guy owned a diamond as big as a mountain or as big as the Ritz Hotel. The problem is if he sold his diamonds, they would become worthless. Okay, so the value of, so selling more output does not get you just, or your revenue does not go up by just the price, and in fact, selling more output could even result in less revenue. Okay, so for the monopolist, we need to calculate marginal revenue as the change in revenue when Q increases. Remember that triangle symbol is a Greek delta, which stands for a change. It's a change in revenue. So, it can be useful to put up a table showing the revenue when producing 1 and selling at a high cost. Then revenue when producing 2 and selling at a slightly lower cost. Revenue when producing 3 and selling at a yet lower cost. And then calculate how much the revenue changes when output increases. Okay, and then PM star, the price the monopolist charges, is where this quantity, QM star, meets the demand curve. Okay. Now, final thing. Profits in the long run? Yes. Okay. The reason that firms make zero profit in a competitive market is if there were higher profits, other firms would enter and drive down the price to the point where they are making zero profits at the new price. With a monopoly, or if the market is a monopoly, firms cannot enter and drive down the price. That's a characteristic of monopoly markets, is usually there is some barrier to entry, right? And so because new firms cannot enter the market, there's some barrier, something preventing them from entering the market. They can't compete and drive down the price. Okay, so the barrier to entry is important, especially for that reason. Okay, so highlight a few things here. The quantity that the monopolist produces occurs where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. The price happens where QM meets the demand curve. And profits in the long run, yes, definitely. Okay, so now, today, we're coming to a couple of new markets. The first is monopolistic competition. This is in between monopoly and competition. There are few industries that are pure monopolies, and there are few industries that are purely competitive. Most are somewhere in between. And I talk about a monopoly like the diamond market. That works pretty well, but if diamonds became too expensive, we'd stop buying diamonds, right? You know, I perhaps I've told you all this, but like, let's see, it's been 17, 18, 19 years since my wife and we were dating, and we decided we were going to get hitched. And I said, honey, I love you very much, but please do not make me do one thing. I will not buy you a diamond engagement ring because diamonds are a scam, more or less. And I was like, they're not worth it. One of these days, the De Beers monopoly will just fall apart, and we'll be stuck with these worthless, like, carbon crystals on our fingers. I'm not going to spend $10,000 to buy you one of those. So how about instead I buy you a beautiful ring that has a different precious stone in it? Okay. And so I bought her an aquamarine. Okay. And it's bigger. It's glitzy. I tell people it's really a blue diamond, which would make it extremely rare in that size, so she can be happy about showing it off. But anyhow, there's really nothing that is a perfect monopoly. There are always alternatives to purchasing that good. So it's kind of a degree of how monopolistic is the market. And even competitive markets, there may be a little bit of difference between one product and another. I mean, when you drive down the road looking for gas stations, do you maybe have a preference? Do you like Shell or Exxon, Chevron? Some people do. And it's not like perfectly exactly the same, that they might view Shell as a little bit different from other gas stations. And so then Shell is selling a slightly unique product. Okay. Both of these situations are kind of in the area of monopolistic competition. Okay. So monopolistic competition is a market with multiple firms, okay, and they sell similar products. Okay, they are unique, but they compete with one another. They are substitutes for one another. Okay, so I like mentioning as examples here the market for smartphones. Uh, okay. Smartphones are close substitutes. Now, a Samsung Galaxy is a close substitute for an Apple iPhone. Okay, but it's unique, though they compete. Okay, Apple has a monopoly on its phone. Samsung has a monopoly on its phone. So they are technically monopolies, but they also compete because their products are similar. So it's somewhere in between a monopoly and competition. Or vehicles. Okay, different companies offer different vehicles. They are similar. They are substitutes for one another. But you think of minivans. Okay, there's several companies that make minivans. 2 or 3 or 4. Name a company that makes a minivan or a type of minivan. What? Toyota, and it is a Toyota. What? Sienna. Okay. And who else? Honda makes the Odyssey. And who else? Yeah. Chrysler makes the what is it? Pacifica. Yeah. Okay. There might be a couple more, but yeah. And the big ones are Toyota Sienna, Honda Odyssey, or the 2 leaders. Okay. Now, Toyota technically has a monopoly on selling a Toyota Sienna. It's the only company that does that. And Honda has a different product, the Odyssey. It has the monopoly on producing the Odyssey. They are not the same thing. They're not perfect substitutes for one another, but they are close. Yeah, and we can look at different categories of um, vehicles. Now, here, okay, let me bring up another one that I might mention later. SUVs, genuine sports utility vehicles. Okay, not the soccer parent type. Okay, Jeep Wrangler. Okay, Jeep Wrangler is a unique product, right? And especially for the past 10, 15 years, the 4-door Wrangler has really had little competition, little close competition. Correct? Okay. Now, I mean, so like a car that is generally useful for utility stuff and doing sporty stuff off road. Okay. Um, but it does have some new competition now. A couple other companies, yeah. Okay. Like the Ford Bronco, the new Bronco, and who makes the Defender? Land Rover. Okay. Um, yeah, the old Defender was more of a competitor for Jeep, but okay, fair enough. The Land Rover Defender. Would you ever take it off road? You might scratch your careful paint. Okay, spill your tea. Okay. Yeah. So there's the Jeep Wrangler, the Ford Bronco, um, uh, and the Bronco's the one that I'm going to mention as kind of a new entrant into the field, like really bringing on the Jeep Wrangler, like head on, competing with the Jeep Wrangler. Because really the Jeep Wrangler filled, for many years, a very special niche in the market. There wasn't anything really like it. A fun, useful car that could go out on dirt roads, gravel roads, drive on the beach, etc., etc. Okay. Um, but then Ford came along, and I think last year released a new Bronco. Okay, not the old style one that is famous for O.J. Simpson. Okay, and like very much looks like the Jeep Wrangler. Has a top that comes off, has doors that come off, can go the same places, has same heavy duty four-wheel drive, plating on the underside of the car. It's really trying to match the Jeep Wrangler. Okay, and we'll come back to that. Okay, so couple of examples, going back, a couple of examples of markets with monopolistic competition: smartphones, vehicles, fashion. Okay. Different companies make similar but competing clothes. Um, Jeans are made by a handful of companies. They are not exactly the same. They each have their own unique style. Like when you think of jeans, what's a company that makes jeans? We can start with what? Wait, you said jeans on Levi? Levi, okay. American Eagle. Yeah. Wrangler. Okay. Um, okay. I'm sure you all could check your tags on your jeans and tell me where they come from. But yeah, we've got a handful of companies here. The Gap, Old Navy, Banana Republic all make their own jeans. Are they perfect substitutes for one another? Are they as interchangeable as gallons of gas? No. They each have a unique appearance, right? They have different cuts, they have different stitching, they have other features that make them unique. And, you know, among things, like they are unique, is there anything you could do to identify a pair of Levi's jeans? Something that makes them stand out? Okay, just a feature. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. There's the leather tag. Okay. There are, in fact, a couple other features. We can get into like details. Yes, Stephanie? Well, this is more of like if you're doing laundry for someone, you can see inside of the pockets they have stitched in their brand logo in the inner side of them. Okay, interesting. Okay, stitching. In fact, even more than that, Levi's has a distinct stitching on the back pocket that looks like this with a sort of curly V on it. Okay, I'll point out that Wrangler does the same kind of thing, except guess what? It's more like this stitching on it. An important thing that I'm going to bring up is they try to have their own unique appearances so that their brand stands out from the others. It's more distinct from the others. I mean, even they try to fill different roles in the market. If you think of Wrangler jeans, what do you associate them with? Okay. Wrangler jeans. I want to say Justin, but that's not your name. Who's Justin? You're Justin. Okay. Man next to Justin. Yes, your name? Garrett. Garrett. Okay, that's right. What do you think of what do you associate with Wrangler jeans? Okay, so you've brought up advertising, but is there a particular style to Wrangler jeans or particular role that they try to fill in the market? Western cowboy? What would those things be true? You're like, not sure. What? Yeah, I mean, I would suggest these different brands try to give different images. Like Levi is kind of traditional, right? That's their selling point. American Eagle would try to be trendy. Wrangler tries to market itself as a cowboy western jean. Okay. So again, they try to set themselves apart, and we could do this with all different areas of the fashion industry. But going back to the main thing, monopolistic competition, multiple firms, close substitutes, they are price setters. Each company can set its own price and doesn't have to match what's going on in the market. You know, Apple comes out with a new smartphone. By the way, I was really excited. Apple invented a new smartphone on Tuesday, where it made announcements of like the upcoming products for the next year. There's a really cool feature of the new iPhone. I told my wife I had to get it because it is, you know what makes it stand out? It's purple. And I like purple. Okay. Anyhow, I'm not going to get it. She said that's not a good enough reason to get a phone. Um, Plus, it's her turn for a phone next. Anyhow, um, uh, you know, new features, but setting prices. Apple can control the price of its smartphones. Of course, there is a trade-off. If it prices them too high, people don't purchase them. They purchase Samsung, Nokia, Google instead. But this isn't like the market for gasoline, where one gas station charging 10 cents more than its neighboring competitors means nobody would buy from it. Okay, it's not that same kind of price taking behavior as in a competitive market. Okay, a final feature of monopolistic competition is that firms can enter the market in the long run. Okay, no barriers to entering the market. Not like with a patent on a unique medication, no one else can duplicate it, or the government gives you the exclusive right to license doctors. Okay, no barrier like that. And so in the long run, firms can enter and sell their own like unique but competing products. Okay, so an important thing going back to a monopoly was the elasticity of demand. This was the last topic almost that I touched on Tuesday. Now, when a company is setting its price, the elasticity of demand is important. We talked about this even early in the course. When a company raises its price, okay, and demand is elastic, there will be a big drop in sales. That's what it means for demand to be elastic. An increase in price results in a larger percent drop in quantity demanded, in the quantity that people are willing to purchase. So it's not very profitable to raise the price if in return there's a big drop in sales. Okay, so when demand is elastic, raising the price does not yield much profit. Okay, when demand is inelastic, there is not much drop in what consumers are willing to purchase when the when the price increases. The definition of demand being inelastic is when price goes up, there's a smaller percentage drop in quantity demanded, and it results in more profit. Okay? You sell just a little bit less, but at a higher price is profitable. So, a lower elasticity of demand means that firms have more ability to raise price and make profit. A high elasticity of demand means that it's not very profitable to raise the price. Raising the price means a big drop in customers. Okay. Also, going way back to when I first talked about elasticity of demand, I gave a handful of factors that will impact the elasticity of demand. And toward the top of the list was that demand is more elastic when, demand is more elastic when there are close substitutes. When there are close substitutes for a good, consumers are more likely to switch to something else when the price of this good goes up. The more unique it is, the less likely they will be to switch to something else when the price goes up. Okay? So that was one of the principles of when demand will be more elastic. Now, that is exactly what comes into play with monopolistic competition. The firms in a market with monopolistic competition are monopolies. Okay? But they are monopolies where there are substitutes, perhaps close substitutes, perhaps very close substitutes. Okay? If they are perfectly identical substitutes, that's the extreme version, which is essentially a competitive market. Okay, so let's go and look at a firm in a market with monopolistic competition, and remember, it is basically a monopoly. So our analysis is going to be along the lines of a monopoly. In this market, just a second, okay. In this market, there's some demand for the good, the demand curve. This tells how many widgets the customers will buy at each different price. Another way of thinking of it is it will tell the price that it will tell for a particular quantity, like, 12 widgets. It tells what consumers are willing to pay for 12 widgets. They would be willing to pay $50 for 12 widgets. Okay? Again, this is another way of thinking about the demand curve. Both of these interpretations are fine. Okay, so there's a demand curve. Then a monopolist has a marginal revenue curve. The marginal revenue curve, I said 3 things about this. It is a downward sloping curve. It lies below the demand curve, and it's approximately twice as steep as the demand curve. Okay, so here's that marginal revenue curve. Like all firms, the monopolist will choose to produce a quantity where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So it will choose its quantity based on this intersection point. Okay, so the quantity produced by this firm, and I'm calling it, in this case, QMC. Maybe I should put a Q star. Profit maximizing quantity for this competitive firm. Or, I'm sorry, not for a competitive firm. For a firm in a market with monopolistic competition. Okay? Again, we're treating it just like a monopoly because it is a monopoly, on its product. But then in just a minute, I'll talk through like what happens as the competitors' products get more and more similar. So quantity, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Then to determine the price to charge, go up from that quantity all the way up to the demand curve. And that says that consumers are willing to pay a particular price for that. So I call that price P star MC. Okay, this is how it determines its price. Okay, now I want to compare that to a firm, or well, the same firm in a competitive market. What it would have done in a competitive market. If that same firm, exact same firm, were in a competitive market, that same marginal cost curve would have been the supply curve, and the competitive equilibrium would have occurred where marginal cost meets the demand curve. Okay, or well, like supply intersects the demand curve. So this point right here. Choo choo. Okay. So, by the way, just since it popped into my mind, how many kind of sellers of passenger train services are there in the U.S.? Nolan's holding up one finger. What is that company? Amtrak, right? And you all know that's an Amtrak passenger train that goes by, right? Okay. So it's a monopolist. What is the barrier to entering the market? Or why is it a monopolist, maybe? There might be one barrier to entering the market. Yeah. Laying down the train tracks. Okay. You can think of that as a substantial barrier to entering the market. Right, so I said monopolists often have a barrier to entry. It's either laying down the train tracks or paying their share of the cost of shared train tracks. Yeah. Okay, so there's a reason why there's rarely competition, and what the barrier is like the big cost of putting down the infrastructure. I guess the other reason it's a monopolist is along the lines of network effects. Yeah. The challenge that Amtrak has is that it maybe just doesn't go enough different locations, right? And if it had more customers, it could go more locations, which would attract yet more customers. Okay, that's the idea of a network effect, right? Okay, anyhow, so let's go back to here. A firm that is a monopolist or in a market with monopolistic competition would choose the quantity based on where marginal revenue intersects marginal cost, and then the price above that. If the firm had been in a competitive market, it would have picked a quantity where marginal cost equals the demand curve. Okay, so compare and contrast the two. The competitive firm, well, if it had been in a competitive market, sorry, I keep trying to word it this way to clarify, this is exactly the same firm, just the nature of the market is different. In one case, it's essentially unique. No one else is competing with exactly the same product. The other is if other firms can produce exactly the same product, this same firm would behave differently in the different markets. The competitive market, more widgets would be produced. So the quantity produced would be higher, and the price the price would be lower. Okay. So both of those things are good for consumers. They can purchase more widgets at a lower price. Consumers like both of those things better. So markets with competition are better for consumers. Also, a competitive market eliminates all profits, like abnormal profits for producers. So that's also essentially good for consumers. Okay, now, so I've been over my monopolistic competition versus perfectly competitive. Now, this first analysis I did, imagine that's the case where there are close substitutes. Then imagine that the market changes a little bit and there is a closer substitute available. Okay, how will that impact the market? Well, a closer substitute, okay, if a closer substitute comes along, we know that it will make demand more elastic. Okay, that was one of the principles of elasticity of demand early in the course. Closer substitutes, demand is more elastic. And that changes the demand curve. The demand curve becomes, okay, someone impressed me by remembering the relationship between the shape of the demand curve and elasticity. Nolan. Okay, perfect. Inelastic is more vertical, elastic is more horizontal. So the demand curve becomes flatter. Okay, so I'm going to take this like exact same market and like sort of show what would happen if there's a closer substitute. Demand becomes more elastic, okay, and so the demand curve becomes flatter. Now, principles for determining the principles for determining a quantity to produce and the price remain the same. Okay. However, okay, so when the demand curve becomes flatter, the marginal revenue curve becomes flatter as well. Okay, so that's a second like change. Okay, so this marginal revenue curve, but still, the decisions of the firm remain: pick a quantity where marginal revenue meets marginal cost. Go down from there. That determines QM prime, just to give it a different name. And then the price, trace up to the demand curve, okay, and tells us that this firm can charge a price of PMC prime. Okay, so changes things, and in particular, do I have a slide that shows? Well, no, I don't have exactly what I want. Okay, now imagine that someone else, another firm, invents a product that is an even closer substitute. Okay, well, a very, very close substitute will make demand even more elastic, and it'll make the demand curve even more flat. Look, something like this. Okay, so I'm trying to keep everything the same except for the steepness of the demand curve. And so again, here are very, very close substitutes. The principles for how the firm behaves remain the same. Okay, now flatter demand curve means a flatter marginal revenue curve, but the quantity that the firm produces still occurs where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Go down, and that determines the quantity that the monopolistic firm or the firm in monopolistic competition produces. Go up from that quantity to the demand curve, and it tells us the price that consumers are willing to pay. Okay, now if you compare these different slides, you will see that the flatter the demand curve is, the closer the price of this firm in monopolistic competition gets to the price that would, like the equilibrium price in a competitive market. Remember, this point right here is the equilibrium in the competitive market, a perfectly competitive market. Okay, and it determines the price, which in this case would be just a little bit lower than what the firm would charge in monopolistic competition, and determines the quantity, which would be just a little bit more than what this firm charges. So let me kind of flip back and forth through these just to compare like what happens in a competitive market. What happens when there are close substitutes, very close substitutes, very, very close substitutes. So you all can just see how the quantity gets closer and closer to the competitive quantity. Price gets closer and closer to the competitive price when the substitutes are closer. The moral of the story is that kind of when the closer the substitutes are, okay, the closer the competitor's products are to my product, the smaller my profit will be, and the closer my price will be to a competitive price, and the closer my quantity will be to a competitive quantity. If I have something very, very unique, I can charge a much higher price and substantially restrict quantity to make more money. But the more similar my competitors' products are to mine, the less ability I have to charge a higher price, and people keep purchasing my stuff. Okay, so yeah. What if it's unique in the sense of an inferior good? Do you have something on your mind?
I would say like Spirit Airlines has a unique experience for air travel, but it's not necessarily better than other airlines experiences.
Okay. Spirit Airlines or other budget airlines. How to fit that into this? Nolan, let me say that's a good question, and it's maybe something it probably in some ways fits with this, but the difference is that Spirit really promotes the cheapness of its tickets, and that it tries to set itself apart from the competition in terms of price, which means that it's getting really closer to how a competitive firm behaves, which is focusing on price and getting a lower price than its competitors. So it means that it believes that it's behaving in a market that's very similar to perfect competition. Whereas other firms are behaving as if they think the market is more like monopolistically competitive, which makes it, I think, a weird situation. I'm trying to process this like on the spur of the moment, and I get the thing. And I think it's just like the airline market is not sure what it is, whether it's an oligopoly, which is like or dominated by a handful of firms selling the same product, or monopolistic competition where they've all got their own unique thing, or perfectly competitive where they try to like bring in customers based on price and sell tickets essentially at marginal cost or as close to cost as they can. Airline industry isn't sure what it is, and different firms are behaving different ways. Um, that's sort of like the top of my head analysis. Okay, it's a great question. Um, yeah. Okay. Now, for this simple model, I'm thinking more along the lines of really, really the older days of the airlines when Delta tried to convince you that they had more leg room than Continental, and Continental tried to convince you that they had more on-time flights, and they really promoted their like distinctive features more than bragging about prices, about low prices. Okay, so okay, in that world of monopolistic competition, the basic starting principle is the closer the substitutes are to what my firm produces, the less profit I will get. And if the competitors are offering exactly the same thing, I get zero profit. So being different is profitable. So this is a super big important characteristic of monopolistic competition. Firms try to differentiate their product. We call it product differentiation. They really promote the differences between their products to make their product unique, to make it seem that other products are not a close substitute, and that kind of their product is worth paying a premium for because of its unique features. Okay? Along with that, advertising is often a feature of markets with monopolistic competition. The firms want to convince you that their product is different. And so they put a lot of effort into sending that signal. So if you think of the examples that I gave you all, um, the market for smartphones, you see smartphone ads all the time, right? You're going to start seeing the phones for this new purple iPhone. The Apple also upgraded its line of iMacs, so you're going to hear about them talking about the new M1 chip, whatever the hell that is, but they're going to make it seem like it's the best thing ever, and you want to buy a new computer with this M1 chip. Also, the new colors for the iMacs, which are going to make it stand out from the other companies. Okay? They're going back to doing like a rainbow array of computers. So again, trying to make them stand out from other companies that are all silver and gray and black. Okay, product differentiation is important. Like having it, the more different your product is than others, the more of a monopoly you are. And also making it clear to consumers that my product is different. So let's see, smartphones, I brought that up. Car ads. You turn on the TV, and you're watching just normal TV, but in every commercial break, you're going to see a car ad for something. And it's going to be something that's trying to tell you like how the Honda Odyssey is better than the Toyota Sienna. It's got an extra cup holder. It's got an extra 4 cubic inches of storage space. It's got, the best ratings from so and so. It's got different features from its competitors. That's always the signal that they are trying to send. Okay? Jeans. Every company is trying to make its jeans different from others. Levi's tries to send the signal that they are a traditional jean company. They are the original jeans, and they stick with traditional cuts. Wrangler, wants you to think that their jeans are for cowboys. So they're tougher jeans. They are bootcut jeans. They are whatever. Okay. American Eagle is going to promote the fashionable side of things. You're never going to find a pair of Wrangler jeans that are like pre-torn up and down the legs. I bet American Eagle sells those, right? Okay. Um, I gave my daughter a hard time when she went shopping recently, and I was like, "Oh, sweetie, those jeans that you just bought, they're all torn. Would you like me to sew them up for you?" And she said, "Dad, you're so cringe." Okay. Um, so, anyhow, product differentiation and advertising. Um, Another industry I could bring up is, I mean, you all don't know much about this, but the beer industry. Okay, maybe in a couple of years you'll understand beer better. But beer, when it comes to like American style lager, okay, there are a handful of big beer producers. Now, does anyone want to make a guess what I'm talking about? Like just normal beer, not craft beers. Okay, American style lager, what comes to mind? Yeah. Okay. Anheuser-Busch? Ooh, challenge my spelling today. Okay, yeah. Sam Adams. Yeah. I mean, I'll put it here. How many D's in Adams? Probably just one. Okay. Other beer companies that you recognize? Yeah. Sorry. Coors. Um, okay. It's a big one. Big one. Oh, Stephanie. Okay, Corona. Yeah. Budweiser. Okay. Hmm? Heineken. Yeah. Um, okay. Etc. Etc. Now, maybe I didn't need to specify American lager. Some of these are not. I was really thinking of the ones that are like Coors, Miller, Budweiser. Okay. They're different brands, and the honest truth is they all taste the same, and they do the same important thing, which is get you intoxicated. They are all almost identical, but, but, if you watch their commercials, they are not, right? Their commercials all try to send a signal that they do something different than their competitors. In fact, that's true of all of these beers, is they try to like convince you that their beer is different from others. Maybe they do it with different taste. Um, you know, Sam Adams probably has some, well, Sam Adams has some different tasting beers. Corona might taste a little bit different. Heineken might taste a little bit different. So they've got different tastes. The more distinct they can make themselves, the more profitable. Okay? And if they can't actually make themselves different, the alternative is to convince consumers that they are different. Okay. So I've come to like I think the final things about monopolistic competition, or maybe one other thing. Um, Long run. Zero profits. Okay. As long as there's free entry into the market, new firms will try to compete, will try to come up with their own products that are, that they recognize that there is a profit opportunity to enter with a similar product. So remember, I brought up the Jeep Wrangler. And you all know, I'm sure you all know what a four-door Jeep Wrangler is. It's been a popular vehicle for the past really 15 years. This is when Jeep first came out with this like four-door vehicle, and there's nothing like it in the market. It stands out. You immediately know what it is when it drives past. It's not like a minivan where you're like, was that a Honda Odyssey or a Toyota Sienna or something else? Like, you can't tell one minivan from another based on its appearance. You can't tell one pickup truck from another based on the appearance, but you can tell a Jeep Wrangler apart from anything else. Okay? The moment you see that cloth top, you know it's a Jeep Wrangler. If nothing else, like that sets it apart. It is a very unique product, and it has been predictably very profitable for Chrysler, its parent company. Okay, well, the other car manufacturers stare in envy at Chrysler, and it's like, damn, y'all got this really profitable car that just stands out. Everyone is willing to pay a premium for it because it is neat and different. We should come up with something like that. And Ford, I think, was really the first to try to break into the market with a Jeep competitor, the new Ford Bronco. Okay? And it's like, here, we've got our four-door car, can do all the same things as a Jeep. It's got a removable top, removable doors, again, the heavy-duty four-wheel drive system, plating on the underside of the car to protect it, etc., etc. So Jeep might have been very profitable in the short run because it was so unique, but in the long run, since there's a profit opportunity in this market, other companies will start to produce something similar. Okay, and so that's sort of always the trend of things. You know, even like the traditional like family SUV, totally different type of thing. That started with a very clever idea by one company. I'm blanking who makes it, or well, who made it. I think General Motors was like, oh, let's take this old traditional class of vehicles, sports utility vehicles, which until then were pickups, Jeeps, and such. Let's make one for a family. And it was the, I think, GM Suburban. Okay? It's the first like SUV family vehicle. And it was a big selling vehicle. And the other car manufacturers were like, oh, we should come up with a family SUV type of vehicle. Okay, and again, like if there's a profit opportunity that one company comes up with a distinct product, other companies will want to do the same kind of thing. And in the long run, the market like, kind of gets saturated with family SUVs. They're probably the most popular family vehicle now. Okay, that's sort of what happens in the long run, and there's zero profit. Okay, bad for the firms, good for consumers. Oh, yeah, great. So now, final topic. I've got what, half an hour? Oligopoly. Oligopoly is a market with several sellers, a few sellers, and they sell they sell the same product, and they each have the ability to influence the price. For the most part, price is determined by how much is being sold in the market. And the more they sell, the more the price will come down, just like with a monopoly, right? The more the monopolist sells, the lower the price in the market will be. Okay, so they are price setters, essentially, because their behavior influences the price. Okay, now markets that are oligopolies, the oldest example was in fact the market for bottled water, which went back to Paris in the 1700s. Okay, Paris, like all big cities, needed lots of drinking water. This was before the days of municipal water supplies and the city cleaning the water and distributing it to people. So if you wanted drinking water, you needed to purchase essentially bottled water that was shipped in from out in the country. And there were two businesses, two companies that sold high quality, clean spring water. One of these companies was Perrier. Recognize that name? Okay. Does anyone want to guess the other company? It is also a name you will recognize. French water? French bottled water? Evian. Yeah. They have been in competition for 300 years. Okay. And initially they were serving bottled water to Paris. Okay. So neither was exactly a monopoly. Now we know what a monopolist would do. Monopolists would restrict quantity in order to keep the price high, not try to sell as much as it possibly could. A monopolist would know that if it sold as much as it could, it would kind of flood the market and not be making much profit on its sales. So it doesn't want to flood the market. Oligopolists, or firms in an oligopoly, think strategically, and something that's different is, well, a couple of things that are different. Like, one is that the behavior of one firm impacts the other and the profits of the other. So, if my firm sells more, that takes away customers from your firm. It brings the price down for me, but it also impacts your profits. Okay, so this strategic thinking is an area of economics called game theory. So you're going to get just the briefest introduction to game theory here. Okay, thinking about strategy between two different players, as we call them, or two different or multiple players, and they each have to come up with a strategy, and the outcome depends on the combination of decisions. Okay, so let's see. So to think about football, okay, or a sports game, we have two teams playing. Let's see, the Patriots. Garrett, I assume you're a Patriots fan, right? Versus, give me another team. Phoenix? What? Oh, the Steelers. Okay. Okay. And so we have two players in the game, and they're going to run a play, and each of them has a couple of strategies. Now, who's going to play offense? I don't know. The Patriots are playing offense. Okay, and the Steelers are playing defense. And before the play, I'm just going to keep this super simple. The Patriots have a decision whether to make a short distance play or a long distance play. Okay, try to run the ball for just a few lines or try to make a long pass to go a long distance. The defense has to kind of plan what it's going to do. Okay, and it has to decide, is it going to go for kind of a short distance strategy or a long distance strategy. Okay, so going to try to make sure that it defends really close to the line of scrimmage in case someone is just trying to run the ball forward a few feet, or does it want to send its defensive people way back in the field to defend against a long pass. Okay, I mean, it's a simplified version of football, but football is, I mean, really a very strategic game because every play, each team is coming up with a strategy, and the outcome of each play depends on the combination of strategies. If the two teams do the same, essentially, that's good for the defense, bad for the offense. Okay, if they choose sort of to do different things, but by the same thing, I mean, like, if the offense decides they're just going to go for a short distance play and the defense decides they're going to go into position to defend against a short distance play, that's good for the defense. They stop the ball. Or if the offense decides they're going to go for a long distance play and the defense decides they're going to prepare for a long distance play, that's good for defense. Okay? But if they do different things, that's good for the offense, right? If the offense is planning a long distance play and the defense goes for sort of a short distance setup, that's, as I said, good for the offense when they don't match. Okay, so good for the Patriots, bad for the Steelers. So two different players, as we say in game theory, in this like simple scenario, they each have two strategies, and the outcome for each person or each player depends on the combination. Okay, all the different combinations give different outcomes, and so they have to think strategically. Okay, now football fans, is this kind of an okay description of the game? Okay. Now, and game theorists are a branch of economics that deal with kind of predicting the strategies and outcomes of these scenarios. And in this case, okay, give you all the ideal strategies. Randomize. Okay. Be unpredictable. Okay. Just as a general thing, like if the offense makes it known that they like to go for long distance plays, the defense is going to respond appropriately. And like, okay, we'll set up our players to prepare to intercept a long distance pass. If so, if the offense like leans one direction or the other, the defense knows that it's better for them to like defend against whatever tendency the offense has. The same is kind of true for the offense. If they know that this team, if their opponent prefers short distance defensive strategies, then they will do long distance plays. So really, the only best strategy is to randomize your behavior. Sometimes go long distance, sometimes go short distance. Try to be as unpredictable as possible. Okay, so I mean, again, like in this simple version of football, highly simplified, let's say, model of football, does that seem to make sense as a logical strategy? Is that sort of approximately true for real football? Well, the stakes will change from one play to another, but I think yes. Okay, so let me go to a market. I try to keep my market simple. Here are a number of widgets that could possibly be produced, and what price consumers would be willing to pay for that quantity. Or to flip this around, like at each quantity, how many consumers would be willing to purchase. The price for $6, consumers would be willing to purchase 2. And then there's a cost function for an industry in this market. Cost is just $1 for each widget they produce. Okay, next thing. I'm going to think about how different firms would behave in this market. The first two are our good old friends, competitive firm, or well, a firm in a competitive market and a firm in a monopoly. Okay, same firm, by the way. Same firm, same demand function, same cost function. It's going to behave differently in different markets. Okay, what would a competitive firm do? Okay, if this market were perfectly competitive, well, we know that a competitive firm will pick QC star, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, but in particular, marginal revenue's price will equal marginal cost. Now, marginal cost. What is the marginal cost of producing a widget in this example? How much does it cost to produce another widget? $1. Okay, 1 is the marginal cost. So, to be clear, marginal cost of producing a widget is $1. So, we have a prediction actually. First, for the price in a competitive market would be $1. So price equals $1. And the quantity that is produced happens where price equals marginal cost. So that happens right here. Produce 5 widgets. Okay. And so profits will be the revenue is they produce price times quantity. So in a competitive market, price would be $1. Quantity produced would be 5, so $5 of revenue. Total cost of the firm, $1 times the quantity produced. So that's $1 times 5 equals $5. And so profit is $5 of revenue minus $5 of cost equals 0 profit. Okay, standard prediction for a firm in a competitive market. Okay, now about a monopoly. What would a monopolist do? Well, a monopolist thinks in terms of marginal revenue versus marginal cost. Okay, so I would add to this table total revenue and marginal revenue. Total revenue when producing one widget. Okay, it can sell one widget for $9. Okay, it can sell 2 widgets for $6 each, so that would be $12 of revenue. Sorry. Okay, that's my radio from the fire department. And oh heck, I hate it when my numbers don't work out the way they're supposed to. Okay, producing 3 widgets, $12, 4 widgets, $12, 5 widgets, $5. Then marginal revenue from the second widget is $3. Marginal widget from revenue from the third widget is 0. Right, from 12 to 12. From 12 to 12 is also 0. From 12 to 5 is 7. I apologize. I wanted my numbers to work out differently. Okay, but it remains true that keep producing as long as marginal revenue is greater than or equal to marginal cost. And so that means it's profitable to produce the first widget and the second widget, and then stop. Okay, there's no point where marginal revenue is exactly equal to marginal cost, but you can still apply this logic and realize that they will maximize profits by producing 2 widgets and selling the 2 widgets at a price of $6 each. So when producing 2 widgets that they sell at $6 a piece, that means that total revenue is $12. Total cost is $2 for each widget. Okay, so profit is 12 minus 2 equals $10 of profit. Okay, so they produce 2 widgets, charge a price of $6. Okay, so now, everything clear here? Okay, so I've worked out for a competitive firm, charges a price of $1, sells 5, makes 0 profit. A monopolist would produce only 2 and charge a price of $6 and make $10 of profit. Okay, but what about oligopolists? And this market is fun, and I'm so sad I'm running out of time. Okay, the oligopolist needs to think strategically in terms of how much it could produce and how much its opponent could produce. I'm going to think about just simply like my firm could produce 1 or 2. What would my opponent, what would you do in response? Okay, so, excuse me, just, thank you. Okay. Ugh. All right. Just let's simplify my decision. Just think about 2 strategies. I could produce 1, I could produce 2. And you could do the same thing, produce 1 or 2. What would the price be and what would the profits be? Okay, so if we each, okay, so I've put up this table right here for different amounts that we could produce. If we each produce 1, then total quantity in the market will be 6, right? So the price would be $2. No, the price, I'm sorry. Yeah, if we each produce 1, 2 are getting produced, and the price will be 6. Now, if I produce 2 and you produce 1, okay, we're producing 3, the price in the market would be $4 each. Okay, this little square down bottom left, if you produce 2 and I produce 1, 3 are being produced and sold, and the price will be $4. If we both produce 2, okay, so that's the bottom right square, then the price will be $3. Okay. And then I want to think about how much profit would I make in each case. So if I produce 1 and you produce 1, I sell 1 for $6 minus $1 of cost. So revenue is 6, total cost is 1. So I make $5 of profit. Got it? Okay. Well, what if you produce 1 and I produce 2? So I'm thinking of this box right here. Price would be 4. So I sell 2 at a price of, let's see, I sell 2 at a price of $4 each. So my total revenue is 8. Right? My total cost is 2. So my profit is 6. Okay, so if I am thinking like a game theorist, I think about these two choices sort of. If your firm is going to produce one, I could make $5 profit by producing one, or I can make $6 profit by producing two. So I would rather produce two. If you're going to produce one, I would rather produce two. Okay, that's my best strategy. That's my best response, as we say in game theory. We talk about best responses to other people's behavior, and then we talk about an equilibrium of the game. I apologize, that was all on the previous slide before I started talking about football. Some other important things in game theory, as I said, strategic behavior, outcomes depend on the combinations of strategies, and then following that, there's an idea of a best response. Okay, my best response, if you are producing one, my best response is to produce two. Okay, but that's only part of the picture. Let's keep going. If you let's do this bottom left box. If you produce two and I produce one, market price will be 4. I will sell one at $4, and so my total revenue is $4. My total cost is $3. I'm sorry, no. My total cost is 1. So my profit is $3. Okay, now I think about, well, still, if you produce 2, but what if I produce 2 as well? Price will go down to $3. And let's see, so then my revenue, I would sell 2 at $3 a piece. I make $6 of revenue. My cost is 2, and so my profit is $4. So then I think again about my best response. If your firm produces 2, I make $3 profit by producing 1. I make $4 profit by producing 2. So I would want to produce 2. So here's the breakdown. My breakdown is, if you produce 1, my best strategy is to produce 2. If you produce 2, my best strategy is to produce 2. So kind of no matter what, I have a best strategy. Okay, so my, what we call dominant strategy, means it's the best thing to do no matter what, is produce 2. Okay, so we've thought about the game from my perspective, but what about from my opponent's perspective? Well, I can make this sort of simple. The game is the same for both of us, right? Everything about this is identical for both of the firms. So my opponent has the same payoffs, as we say, profits from all the different combinations of decisions, and my opponent will have the same best strategy, which is produce 2. Okay, so we have a prediction of what will happen in the market. Each firm produces 2. So the total quantity produced in the market, so QO star, total quantity in this oligopoly is 4, and the price will be $3. And each firm makes $4 profit. We're in that bottom right corner. Okay, so this is that strategic style of thinking, and I'm going to say this is different from, this is different, or like the outcome here is somewhere in between what a competitive firm would do and what a monopoly would do. A monopoly would produce 2 and charge a price of 6. In the market with an oligopoly, 4 would be produced and the price would be 3. With a competitive firm, 5 would be produced and the price would be 1. So somewhere in between is the prediction. Profits are also somewhere in between. The monopoly would have made $10 of profit. Competitive firm would have made 0 profit. Each of the oligopolists, each of these 2 oligopolists make $4 of profit, so $8 in total. Okay. There's something weird, though, that happens, is that actually, if the 2 oligopolists would each produce only 1, they would both have more profit. Okay, I realize I'm out of time, but again, here's something that's weird. Producing 1 apiece generates $5 of profit for each of us. Okay, now this corner that I've marked is what we'd call an equilibrium. It's the prediction of the outcome of the game. And it's where everyone is playing their best response. So paradoxically, if both firms changed their strategy and produced only 1 apiece, both firms would make more profit. Okay? So there's a temptation to collude. Okay, I'll finish this up very quickly. Temptation to collude and have an agreement to produce 1 apiece. And again, if we both do that, if we both cut back our output, we will make more profit, each of us. Okay. This is another characteristic of a market, of an oligopoly market, but collusion is fragile. Realize that if we were to collude and try to agree to each produce only 1, I would get $5 of profit. If I cheat on the arrangement and make a second widget, I get $6 of profit. Same is true for you. If we agree and shake hands that we're just going to produce 5, and then you accidentally produce and sell 6, that's more profit for you. You have this temptation to cheat on the deal. Okay, so that's kind of a final lesson. Collusion is fragile. Okay, the end. Okay, thank you all for being